Hi, thank you for joining me. We're at EMC World, and we're talking today about big data and the value that it brings to your organization. I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to get from here to there. Today I'm going to bring you the tea. So how do we take data in an organization and turn it into opportunity? Well, I think the first thing to do is look back at organizations that have had challenges with this process. Good example of that is Blockbuster. So Blockbuster had all of the things to be able to provide a good opportunity for their customers. Blockbuster had all of the data, all the information about their subscribers. They knew what the genre they cared about. They knew about everything about those people, and they had the contracts with all of those providers to be able to get the video data out to those customers. The challenge was they didn't have a good cataloging process. They didn't know what they had, and they didn't know how to turn that into something relevant. As a result, Netflix took over, and Blockbuster became Blockbusted. Good example of what's happening though today, an actual very real relevant solution, is the taxicab companies are under attack right now. They've owned the world of transportation by car for a long period of time. But those taxicab companies have been replaced very quickly and rapidly by Uber. Now this process, of course, isn't completely finished, and there's a good opportunity if taxicab companies can pivot to the digital era. But they need to be able to take the data that they have, the information that exists for how they get people from point A to point B, how they handle vehicle management, how they do all of those things they already know how to do, get the data in one place, and then go after Uber with the right kind of applications. But most people think that their industry is without reproach. Banking is a great example. Bank's been around forever. Everyone thinks it's not going anywhere, right? Banks are seeded. Have to have my bank. But the banks are under attack as well through things like Bitcoin and PayPal. How we get information or money transferred between different places has completely changed with the advent of the internet. The data now exists to be much better and stronger at doing banking, and yet those banks are still trying to figure out how they reduce costs and provide a little bit more value for their customers. Look at new technologies though. Upstart and Lending Club are great examples of where they're taking money away from the banks. I, for example, might take some money out of my bank, put it into Upstart or Lending Club. I can provide you a direct loan. Well, that process of going straight to the consumer and cutting out the middleman of the bank allows me to make more margin on my money while at the exact same time providing the person the same loan that they would have gotten from a bank. That process is going to eat away and erode margins of the banks. So what can a bank do about that? They certainly have more data, more opportunity, more money, and they can have better branding. They've been around for years and they're a trusted advisor. But if they don't figure out a way to take their data and utilize it for their advantage, then they're going to be out of business. Healthcare. Healthcare, same problem. Interesting though, you go to a doctor, and everyone's done this before. They see the doctor's little scribble note and they go, how does anybody read that? In fact, I got to believe that the nurses, their primary job, first class in school is reading doctor's notes. It's crazy. But technology has certainly advanced past taking notes and putting a monitor or hearing your breath or your heartbeat and trying to figure out what the problem is. So what is the future? I remember what the future was because I saw it on TV. I mean, the tricorder. I hit a button, Star Trek, scan the body. What do I get? A result, nearly instantaneous. What's wrong with broken bones, what heart arrhythmia, whatever it might be, I'm going to make sure I can find that answer and I can find it quickly. We're not too far off though. The information era has allowed hospitals to start getting more information quicker. There's new sensors, new information coming out of things like genomics research. Being able to look at a body from the perspective of what's happening down to the genome level and add that information into a diagnosis, but do it very quickly and efficiently and have the entire panel of information through technology, it's available and it's here today. How does that matter though? Data. The point of all of this is that the data is there, and a hospital can be more efficient if they can figure out how to utilize that content against what their competition will ultimately be using against them. And certainly those competitions are growing. Finally, I've had this problem before. I've had that face before. I think all of you feel that energy that's coming from this guy. He's very upset that his phone, he lost the call. Yeah. You're on the phone with your boss, you're about to make the perfect point, and your phone cuts out. First thing you think, I hate my carrier. First thing goes through your mind is, I'm going to think about switching. And sure enough, if you go talk to any telecommunications company, they're going to tell you that the number one time people switch is because of the lack of loyalty. Well, how do you gain loyalty for somebody who's upset with their telecommunications provider because they dropped a call? Well, first thing is you need to understand, why did the call drop? What if it has nothing to do with the actual telecommunications provider? What if that provider actually has a great cell site right next to that person, but the person dropped their phone a few days ago and the antenna inside was cracked, just getting barely enough connectivity, and they think the cell tower is a problem? Well, first thing you have to do is analyze the data, find out, is that subscriber disconnecting when everyone else is staying connected? If that's the case, then you can draw conclusions that there's probably something wrong with the handset. But today, telecommunications providers can't keep that information. The data is too much coming off of the tower, because it used to just be who called who, phone number in, phone number out, how long did they talk, and that was the important part of the conversation. But now there's new information, GPS coordinates. How much signal strength is there between the tower and the person? What towers are they in range of? What text messages are they sending? How many are they sending? There's data sets that are available that they could be analyzing to get better information. So today we can take big data, we can load it into new applications that have been developed by some of our partners, for example, and we can find out how many dropped calls is that person having and when are they having them, and we can correlate that to the fact that the user probably has a problem with their handset. Now that data-driven application is going to be the thing that allows the consumer to get a new device. A new device comes maybe from the carrier. We want to keep you happy. We're going to send you the latest iPhone, the latest Android. As EMC, of course, we're agnostic to whatever device you want to have. Don't worry. Point is, if your provider sends you a new phone and says, hey, we think you have a problem with your phone, and sure enough, that fixes the problem, you stop having drop calls, you're not just loyal, you're a lifetime loyal. You've really changed your entire perspective on how you do business with that particular telecommunications provider. That matters a lot. The thing all of this wraps around is this concept of the chief information officer is constantly doing something that concerns me. And we as executives of our organizations need to think differently. All of these previous companies have started to think differently, but we need to think differently and a little bit faster. Chief information officers need to start thinking of themselves as chief innovation officers. And that's a really big change in thinking, because it used to be, I need to replace my network system and make sure I provide a good quality connection for my users. I need to think about virtualization, how I reduce costs. I need to think about telecommunications, having telephones for my employees, or giving them a laptop or a desktop. How do I handle my accounting software application package? All those kinds of basic necessity items are what the CIO tends to be focused on. What are those major projects that need to be accomplished? But if you really stepped away and said, you know what is being attacked from the organization? How are we going to get replaced? Start thinking about some of these examples and realize that no matter what industry you're in, you're not safe. You have the opportunity of being replaced, and constantly be thinking about what data sets you have that could change that. You have the opportunity of really changing your organization. And we want to help with that. So I draw an analogy. If you haven't seen the Lego movie, this might be a little bit of a weird analogy, but I think you'll like it. In Lego movie, they talk about the concept of follow the directions. I think this is what a lot of times CIOs are doing. CIOs are saying, hey, you know what, my organization needs a new network. So I go and I execute that project. Now, I'm not saying that's without a lot of work. This is a lot of work, and a lot of people are taken to have to go figure out these very basic necessity items, because they are still very complicated and they're big projects and you can't get them wrong. But at the same time, if all we do is simply build the Legos, take it out of the box and see what's on the front of the box, and we build exactly what the box says to do, then you're following the instructions, but you're not necessarily making anything new or innovative. Problem is, it's really hard to figure out how you build something when all of your bricks are all over the place. Your building blocks are in different rooms of the house. They're in different databases. They're in file systems. They're in object systems. They're up on websites. Information for your organization exists in many, many places throughout the company. The challenge with that is I don't know what exists. And companies have gone through some extensive processes of trying to catalog that data. But there's a good chance, since most people haven't, that you still have no idea what information exists in all those different databases, anecdotally. And oftentimes what you're waiting for is the instruction from the business to go execute a plan for taking one or two different data sets and correlating them and finding some answer. If you're really on top of your game, maybe you have some analytics departments that are starting to look at data sets and figuring out what correlation they get. And of course, companies like Teradata, IBM's and Teza, they've been there to try and collect those different databases and do that correlation for many years. But the whole world is changing now that file and object has changed as well, with these new kinds of sources of content, and as well as content outside of your domain. If you think about the Lego movie, if you've seen it, you know, when Emmett flies out of his territory, he's starting to look at whole new worlds of data that he didn't even know existed. Goes to Western Town and even Cloud Cuckoo Land, which hopefully our clouds aren't Cloud Cuckoo Land, but Cloud Cuckoo Land exists, and those are the data sets, the blocks that are in that space could be useful for building something new. So how do we take that information and align it? First thing to do, let's separate it out. Let's tease the information out, and let's see if we can't figure out what we have and how much of it we have. Just like if you're going to go build something from your Legos, if you separate it out into the different components and see what colors, what sizes, do I have 1x2s and 2x3s, and the different parts and components, I may not have any wings. If I want to try to build an airplane, it's not going to work. So maybe I decide to shift and build a car instead. Point is, I'm building something. I'm doing something unique. And as a kid, I took Legos and I tried to build something just to build it. I wasn't thinking about what the end result was going to be. I started plugging two pieces together, and I realized I was starting to get something cool, and then I started to shift this way and shift that way. Data-driven applications are exactly built that way. You have to start looking at the data, seeing what you have, laying it out in front of you, and starting figuring out what you might be able to do with it. But don't stop if you don't know. Just start doing. Start doing some correlation. This is what data scientists are great at this. They'll take two different data sets, they'll connect them and see how it works, and they'll add a third and they'll add a fourth. And they'll get to the point where they've found something cool, and ideally they come to you and say, hey, did you know that this information, plus maybe this Cloud Cuckoo Land information, just created a whole new perspective on our business that will allow us to replace ourselves in the right way to make it so that somebody else can't do the same. This is our opportunity in front of us. This is the thing that will allow us to build whole new businesses, whole new things out of those building blocks. So I implore you, take a look at the data lake. The data lake is that foundation. It is the place where you can separate all your bricks out and figure out what you have. As you start to take that information and find it and determine what you have and start putting it into the different places within your organization, you will get to the point where you've built something incredibly unique and new value and will be one of those customers working with you. Start by taking all those bricks, determine the different sources of information, whether it's your internal databases, whether it's information off the new data.gov that has all sorts of government-based data, might be good for useful for your business, whether it's Twitter for sentiment analysis or other usage. Twitter is such an easy one. LinkedIn, also a great one. LinkedIn, you can completely revolutionize your HR department. Start looking for people with the right skill sets so that you can hire the right people and put them in place. What a huge opportunity. Twitter, everyone wants to know, what do people think about my business? Guess what? People on Twitter are telling you. They have sentiment. When they write something, they're going to use words in their comments about your organization. They're going to say, I like you or I don't like you. Great example is when you fly an airline. If you missed your flight, you're probably going to say something pretty negative. If you had a great experience because they brought you an extra drink or they checked you in quicker, whatever it might be, and you say something nice about them, the sentiment goes up. And you're less concerned about it, is it 20% positive or 80% negative? It's more, are we going up or are we going down? And how can we change that? How can we make people feel more comfortable because they have a voice and people are listening? And every company, every product, every government agency should know what people think about their product, their solution, their technology, whatever it is that they're providing to the organization. And so a simple thing to do with tools like Hadoop is pull data in from Twitter analysis and turn it into something that you can see for your business or your product. But you have to just start. You start thinking about it, start innovating. And to close out the presentation, I'll say this. If you do all of these and you do it all right, as the song says, everything is awesome. Good luck to you. If you have any questions about big data, how big data can change your business, if you need help with how we might be able to innovate for you, we can absolutely come in and support your organization. But get started, start looking at your data set, get it into a data lake, get it to a point where you can start analyzing that content and understanding what you have in front of you. Because if you do that and you do it right, you'll be the one going into the board to tell them how you're going to change your business. Good luck.